Story of the world's first pirate radio station was started in 1916 during the Easter Rising, when the rebels had taken over the GPO. One of the Plunkett's first decisions was to take this building here, which is 10 to 11 O'Connell Street. Not because on the ground floor was a jeweller shop, he also wanted to protect it from looters, but on the fourth floor there was the Irish School of Wireless Telegraphy. Plunkett knew the value of radio. Their problem was that in 1916 the British, with their Defence of the Realm Act, would clamp down on all communications out of Ireland. He wanted to communicate with Germany and he wanted to communicate with America, America being its financial backers, Germany being its military backers. But he knew the value of radio. He knew that if he got the story of the rebellion out there, it would be important for the cause itself. So they seized the building here. Their next mission was to try and get the wireless station operating again. Now, he had a couple of electronic geniuses, we'll call them, who were crossing the GPO. So he sent a man called Fergus O'Kelly and John O'Connor. Now, John O'Connor was John Blimey O'Connor because he was actually born in London. He was second generation Irish, but he was an electrician. And between the two men, they came across here. Initially, weren't allowed into the building because when they heard the English accents outside knocking on the door, they wouldn't open the door. So there was a lot of confusion for a while, and eventually they were let in. And they went up to the fourth floor and they had a look at the transmitter and the equipment was there to see if it could be switched back on. O'Connor quickly discovered, yes, the batteries were still intact, they still had power, so they were able to turn the transmitter on. They took the wiring out the window, up onto the roof, and Fergus O'Kelly and John Blimey O'Connor went out to attach the aerial. Unfortunately, there were snipers both in the Eamon Street station and across on what was McBurney's, and it was under heavy fire. They re-erected the aerial up on the roof. Eventually, during the night, they got it done. So Plunkett dictated a communique. So he sent a communique across, and at 5:30 on Tuesday, not radio as you know it through, we'll say, News Talk or BBC, it was Morse code. But the difference was that Morse code in 1916 was point to point. This was broadcast. It was whoever would listen and whoever would hear. So it was a brand new idea. It was very innovative, the rebels, that sent out this communique. So at 5:30, Fergus O'Kelly took the first turn at the Morse code at the tapper, and he tapped out the message that the Republic had been declared in Dublin. It was probably hopeful more than anything else. They had no way of knowing whether it was received or not, so they just kept tapping out the message until the British brought the Helga up the Liffey and started to shell this building. The British knew there was a radio station. The reason they knew was that one of the first people to receive the station was the wireless operator on HMS Adventure out in Dundee. So he was the first listener as such. So he informed his commander, who informed London, who decided that to tell the Helga that this block of buildings had to be targeted first. So on Wednesday it became impossible. Most of the buildings, the Dublin Bread Company and all the buildings from the jewellery shop on the corner all the way down to here were aflame. Plunkett knew the value of the station, knew that the messages were getting out, so they dismantled all the equipment, stuck it in an upturned table and tried to bring it across to the GPO. But snipers in Trinity College, snipers in McBurney's and the shelling from the Helga, it got destroyed in the middle of O'Connell Street. The rumour went around on the streets that we were broadcasting to the world. Some of the witness statements from the rebels outside the GPO said that this was said to them as they were going in and out of the GPO, that we were broadcasting to the world. I mean, this was, you know, a huge morale boost, especially in the first couple of days. As I mean, the Rising itself was a fairly large failure. I mean, they had 10,000 volunteers trained and 1,467 turned out. So, you know, and by the end of the week there was 35,000 British troops in the streets of Dublin. You know, so they were on a hiding to nothing from the minute they got into the GPO. But it was a morale boost. It definitely was a morale boost because it spread like wildfire. We were broadcasting to the world. I mean, this is, you know, it's 1916. I mean, radio was still in its infancy. Marconi was still inventing it. The value of the station was shown by the News of the Rising appeared in American papers before it appeared in British papers. Now, British papers were all, you know, the censorship laws were very tight, but it appeared on the late Tuesday paper in New York, which meant it was probably heard by a ship, who sent on the Morse code message to its station in New York and on then to the newspapers to say, oh, there's a rising in Dublin, because the reports in the paper, if you get the papers from the American papers from that night, it's very detailed of exactly, and it's very Irish based. Obviously they're working on the communiques, because Pearse dictated 3 communiques to be sent out. The first one was the Declaration of the Republic. The second one was that the British were on the run and that the city had been seized and the country was rising. And the third one was not a rambling communique, but it was a communique of more or less the proclamation, a shortened version of the proclamation, to say this is what we are. And it was signed by Pádraig Pearse, CNC officer in command, President of the Provisional Government of the Irish Republic. So it got to America first before it appeared. It appeared in Wednesday morning's papers in England, but it appeared in Tuesday night's papers in America. So obviously it was hugely significant. And it was kind of lost. The likes of John O'Connor and Fergus O'Kelly and Liam Breen, they were heroes of mine, because they were managed to use this brand new technology to their advantage. Brilliant idea. One of the rebels who was, one of the detachment was sent over to seize the building was a man called Arthur Shields. And Arthur Shields was an Abbey actor. He would have later come to everyone's knowledge as the priest in The Quiet Man. He was actually Barry Fitzgerald's brother. Now, Barry Fitzgerald didn't take any part. I think he may have been in Hollywood at that stage. But Arthur Shields was one of the men in this building. And when Pearse surrendered, a famous photograph of Pearse surrendering to the 2 British soldiers. The two British soldiers in it was General Lowe and his son. If you look at the photograph, you'll see the son. He's in a pair of white breeches, and that's General Lowe's son, John. And John, after the war, the First World War, initially went to Germany to become an actor and ended up in Hollywood. And in a film called How Green Is My Valley, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in the dressing room with that, because John Loder was in it, who had taken the surrender of Pearse, and Arthur Shields was in it, who was one of the rebels who was here in this building at the radio station. I'd say there was a fair bit of conversation about who shot who. I'd love to have been a fly on that wall.